All right, we are back for another edition of SJHL Insider. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jeromy Corrigan, the media manager for the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. And each and every episode of SJHL Insider is presented by our good friends at SGI. They present our podcast sponsor. And of course, we have so many other great sponsors for both of our shows, SJHL Insider and SJHL Weekly, that being Chevrolet, Capital Automall, Great Western, Cantera Seeds, RBC, SaskTel, SGU, Direct West, Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, Tourism Saskatchewan, and Young's Equipment. Thank you for your support. And another jam-packed show today for SJHL Insider. Today we will be joined by the play-by-play voice of the Ronge Ice Wolves, Megan Hayhurst. And Ronge is coming off a busy week, 4 games in 5 nights, all on the road. They handed Humboldt their first loss of the season. And they also picked up 6 out of a possible 8 points on their recent road swing and are now about to begin a lengthy stint at home, but we'll get into that with Megan. Of course, it's time now to bring on my co-host, producer Clark. Clark, how are we doing today?
Great. There's so much to talk about today. It's exciting. Let's get into it.
It's great. As Tony the Tiger once said. Ooh, it's great. Nice. Yes, you're right. We have lots to get into, and we might as well kick it off with your favorite segment.
Yes, my favorite segment, absolutely. Again, it's going to be an exciting show. Can't wait to hear about the Ronge Ice Wolves. But before we get to that part of the show, let's do the hat trick.
That's where all my hats went.
They took them.
They went into
for the design boys took them.
Yeah, they took them.
So topic number 1, it's been a quiet start to the week, but there was one game on Tuesday night. However, it was a dang good one, Jer. It was a really good game. Weyburn was in Kindersley. Let's show the recap here of that one. Weyburn visited Kindersley in the lone game so far this week, and it was a 4-3 win. Jer, what did you see during that game?
Yeah, and each one of our recaps, of course, is presented by Sask Lotteries. And yeah, like you mentioned, we've only seen one game so far this week. But I mean, here's the thing: that game was pretty entertaining if you were able to watch it on Hockey TV. The Kindersley Clippers got off to such a hot start in that game. They had 2 goals in the first period. I think they scored in the first 2 minutes of the second, and they had a 3-0 lead. And they were trying to build off that game against the Melfort Mustangs, where they won 7-4 at home on Saturday. But you know what? You have to give credit where credit's due. Cody Mapes decides, okay, my team's not playing the greatest right now. We are going to make a goaltending change. And Daza Mitchell comes in. And after watching that game, it looked like a completely different team once Daza Mitchell got in between the pipes. And Weyburn really turned it around. It was the spark they needed. They got 2 goals in the second and then 2 goals in the third, and they come back for a 4-3 win. And, we talked about it on SJHL Weekly. Rory brought it up, but it's a big week for the Weyburn Red Wings. 3 games against teams that are right around them in the standings. And for them to kind of kick it off with a 4-3 win over Kindersley in comeback fashion to snap a 3-game losing streak, obviously for Cody Mapes and the rest of the team, they must be pretty happy.
Oh, it's huge. And, you mentioned it earlier, but the young Eric Call got the start in this game. I think it was his first SJHL game, first Junior A game. Just got called back to the Weyburn Red Wings. And, it's a shaky start for him, but he's a young guy, and it's a tough one on the road, especially Kindersley, who has kind of picked up a couple wins here and there lately. They're kind of picking it up a little bit. So when they made that switch to the guy who they've kind of been riding the whole season, in Daza Mitchell, there was like a confidence switch that went off, like you kind of mentioned, and a couple of the big boys scored a couple of goals to get them back into it, and a fun game overall.
It was
to
a
watch.
fun game.
Yeah.
And you know what? I kind of, if you look at the stat sheet, I feel for Kindersley a little bit in that game because they were pretty shorthanded in that game. I think they only dressed 17 players. They got off to a 3-0 start and everything like that, but unable to close it out. They dropped that game. They're now 1-2 on their 5-game homestand, and it definitely doesn't get easier because they play host to the Humboldt Broncos on Friday. But both of these teams have 2 more games left.
Yeah,
this week.
1-8 on the power play for Kindersley as well. So tough go there as well.
Yes, very tough go. But so Kindersley will be looking to bounce back. They close out their 5-game homestand this weekend. They play Humboldt on Friday, Yorkton on Saturday. Meanwhile, the Weyburn Red Wings, big home and home this weekend against their division rivals in the Melville Millionaires. But that's the only game to talk about so far this week. We got 2 games tonight. We'll get to that in a bit, but quiet start to the week, unlike the past weeks we've had so far this
Quiet start, but a fun one. So let's get into topic number 2 now. We're going to our friends at Direct West for the most recent Direct West commitment of the season, and that is the Flin Flon Bombers forward Jaden Mercier committing to Lindenwood University, becoming an SJHL hub.
It really is, yes. First off, congratulations to Jaden. The news broke, what was that, late Monday?
Yep.
Late Monday or Tuesday.
Yep.
My days are mixed up. Regardless, congratulations to Jaden, and very well deserved. He's off to such a good start this season. I mean, we saw him in Estevan last week, and he was very noticeable. One of the best players for the Flin Flon Bombers, and he has been all season so far. He's got 4 goals and 14 assists, and they're off to a good start this year. And you know what? You mentioned it, Clark. You know, they have, when it comes to Lindenwood University, you mentioned it. It's starting, the program's growing there.
Yep. And,
you know, they're starting to become a hub a little bit for SJHL talent. Of course, they have former Bombers forward Drew Kuzma there.
Yep.
Ethan Zilke will be going there shortly too. So there's lots of talent from the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League going to Lindenwood, and you know, we've seen how, I think this is the 3rd commitment, Division I commitment so far this season in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. I would bet we're going to see a lot more.
I think there's some more coming, absolutely. Especially, we talked about it a few weeks ago, but the SJHL Showcase, you always see kind of a domino effect after that event. Teams start talking to these players, they see them live, and then over the course of the next month or 2, they start they want to nail these guys down so that they're locked in for their rosters for the next year or 2. So that event is a big catalyst for this stuff to start happening. For Mercier, again, you kind of mentioned it, but he had 44 points in 39 games last year, 14 points in the playoffs, and 6 points in 5 games at the Centennial Cup in Estevan last spring. You can see all this information and more at sjhl.ca, by the way, in the article.
Good plug.
You're welcome. But definitely a well-deserved commitment, and exciting for the Flin Flon Bombers as they get another one going to Lindenwood University.
100%. And here's what we call in the biz a tease, Clark. We are going to have Jaden Mercier on SJHL Weekly on Monday with Rory, Jamie, and myself. Jaden will join us for that, so looking forward to chatting with him. We got on it right away once the news broke, so excited to talk to Jaden about the start of the season, but obviously the Direct West commitment for him to go off to Lindenwood University. You touched on it, very well deserved. He's off to a great start this season, and you know what? It looks like him and the Bombers are going to be one of the top teams to beat in the SJHL this season.
Yeah, and they have been quite hot lately as well. We talked about that a bit last week. Let's get to topic number 3. Now, for this one, last week we posted the stats, the player stats.
Yeah, last week we did both. We did the top 10 scorers and we did the top 10 goalies.
Yes, exactly. Now, one of the unfortunate things with the top 10 scorers in the league, none of them are defensemen. So we had a comment, I think it was on Facebook after last week. How come the defensemen never get any love? And like Michael Jordan said in the Last Dance documentary, and I took that personally.
That's fair.
So we're going to look at the top scoring defensemen right now and kind of get a glimpse into some of these play drivers, power play quarterbacks, you know, these guys who are putting up points from the blue line. So, Jeromy, what do you want to?
Well, I think for me, the big thing that stands out, which I love about the SJHL, is, I mean, you look at this top 10 list, and I think there's players from so many different teams.
Yes,
right.
Variety.
There's such a good variety. Like each team is very well represented, and it goes past the top 10 in scoring points and everything like that. And as you know, Clark, defense isn't just about scoring points.
Right. Well, the best part about that list, and if you guys can bring it up one more time, a lot of these players are also the top penalty killers on their team.
100%.
They're also the
Big
best
minutes.
shutdown guys
Big
on their
minutes.
team.
Big minutes.
So these guys are all important. And we heard from Marty Martinson, was it last week, about Jordan Gibbs and his impact on Battlefords. We heard about it a couple weeks, last week on SJHL Weekly, Jared Sitch in Notre Dame.
Yep.
He's a huge piece of that team, not just for his scoring. So Alex von Sprechen, Defenseman of the Week.
Sure. Yeah.
He did a lot more than put up 4 points last week. So these guys are important.
Yeah, and as you can see on the board, the big thing is Tynan Ewart and Xander Stewart. They lead in assists when it comes to defensemen. And then Jared Sitch has the most goals with 5. But as you can see, there was 7 defensemen with double digits points already.
Right.
And that's almost a point per game as defensemen in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League.
Always
which is
important.
Which is always important. And we talk about it. Like, we're going to we've already seen a couple of commitments from the blue line when it comes to the SJHL. And I mean, from that top 10 list that we showed right now in scoring, and with that being said, we're only a month into the season, and again, points aren't everything for defensemen, but all 10 of those defensemen are extremely talented.
Yes.
And are some of the top defensemen in the SJHL. From Tynan Ewart from the top, Xander Stewart, Jared Sitch, Alex von Sprechen. The list goes on and on when it comes to defensemen in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. And one thing we've talked about this season in the first month, a big thing we've talked about is the goalie so far this season. I think the defensemen are right up there when it comes to top tier talent in the SJHL. And I think once, as the season progresses and everything like that, you're going to see more defensemen starting to produce even more and contributing more and more to their hockey clubs.
Well, and on top of that, too, like we talked about it early in the year, how good the goalies were doing. We've talked about it almost every show on the Insiders. And I think back to, a conversation that you, Rory, and Jamie had on SJHL Weekly early in the season.
Right.
I think it was about Cam Herdlicka, and he put up great numbers last year as a backup goalie.
Yep.
And I think Rory said, well, he had a great team in front of him.
He did have a great team.
And how much of that early success the goalies have had this season is because of the defensive play across the league, and in certain teams especially. So absolutely, a good goalie is sometimes a result of a good team structure in front of you, good defense in front of you, and these guys lead the way. But there's some other names too, like we've talked about, not on that top 10 list. A guy like Karsten Cater, a young 16-year-old, exciting to watch. Alexa Babic in Estevan has been very good this year.
There's so many.
So there's a ton of guys, and we'll get to those guys throughout the year because I'm sure that list is going to change.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we could probably do almost a full podcast or episode on just defensemen.
I'm in.
And maybe, you know what? In spitballing here, we could do that around Christmas time. That's an idea. We could do that around Christmas. There's obviously when there's a break at Christmas this year in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League, I think, which, by the way, I think we're all thankful for. There isn't games around New Year's this year compared to previous years.
Yeah.
But, for those types of podcasts right around Christmas time, I think that's something we can definitely dive into a bit more. And
Put it on the planning board.
It's already on the planning board.
Good.
The planning board is pretty full, but
it's a great planning board, by the way.
It's a great planning board.
We'll show it in behind the scenes one day.
Yeah, actually, I think we have showed it on our TikTok, which be sure to follow if you are on TikTok. Also, before we get to our guests, yes, there we go. Let's plug the social media. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Also, big one, it's not on the board. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is where you're going to see every video episode of SJHL Insider, SJHL Weekly, video features, highlights, behind the scenes stuff, maybe. Clark, am I missing anything? No.
Did you say SJHL road trips?
SJHL road trips.
Yeah.
The list goes on. We got 2 more this week.
Yeah.
Now, I'll tell you more about it later. But
Okay.
it is now time. Let's get to our guest. A very special guest joining us, the voice of the Ronge Ice Wolves, Megan Hayhurst. Hey, Megan, how are we doing today?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We are doing great. I mean, it's always a good day when we get to talk SJHL hockey. So first and foremost, I want to talk about last week with you. It was a very busy one for the Ice Wolves. 4 games and 5 nights. but they win 3 out of 4. Let's start on Tuesday in Humboldt, knocking off the undefeated Humboldt Broncos. What was that game like, and how well did the Ice Wolves play that evening?
It was pretty exciting, especially for them to have done it in the final minutes there, right, to, tie things up and get the go-ahead goal. So it was pretty awesome, especially having, had 3 straight losses to them, and they were getting ready to face a different opponent, so change was good there. So it was a must needed win to start things off right on that road trip.
It really sets the tone for a 3-game and 4-night road trip. You start obviously in Humboldt, then you go to Yorkton, a day off, Melville, Yorkton. How do you think that win kind of helped them moving on for that road trip for the rest of it?
It definitely gave them confidence, and brought them together again and showed them that, anything's possible when they work together. It doesn't matter how much time's left on the clock. Just find a way to keep going, no excuses. So, yeah.
What do you make of the start of the season for the Ronge Ice Wolves? Obviously, we've seen some peaks and valleys for the hockey club, but I think right now, coming off 3 out of 4 wins on a very difficult road trip, head coach Kevin Kaminski's coming back to the bench. I guess, what do you make of the start of the season right now for the Ronge Ice Wolves?
Overall, I think it's pretty great. I know sometimes some of the scores have people kind of scratch their head or something like that. But yeah, it's a pretty good start. Our fans should be pretty proud and happy, and same with the coaching staff and the players. They've all worked pretty hard, and just like every other club, battle through injuries or trades, looking to get everybody gelling together on different lines and things like that. So yeah, overall it's been pretty great. There's not a single line that can't produce out there.
Maybe just speak to the job that Kyle Schneider did in the absence of Kevin Kaminski, because I think, with Kevin having a 10-game suspension to start the season, that's a big obstacle to face, I think, for any hockey club, with you being without your head coach for 10 games. But, I saw the Ice Wolves play for a couple of games in there, and they were playing some extremely good hockey with Kyle Schneider behind the bench. Maybe just speak to the job he did in Kevin's absence.
Yeah, Kyle did great. It was a big challenge to, come into, his second season as an assistant coach, and having to, last year he was behind the bench as head coach a couple of times there within the COVID season. But yeah, to have to do the first 10 games is a big ask. And he did great, and the players responded well to him, and the fans, everybody was very thrilled with his efforts. And, I had them on our podcast last week talking about it. And, personally, he said it was great for him too, to get that experience.
100%. Yeah, that's great experience for him, obviously, down, if he ever wants to become a head coach in the SJHL or elsewhere in junior hockey, for sure. Now, for the Ice Wolves, for you guys, obviously, you're coming off 3 games in 4 nights, but now a lengthy stint at home. I think you have now 4 straight games at home, and then I think 10 out of 11 at the Mel moving forward. What do you think this stretch of home games is going to mean for the club moving forward this season?
I think it's going to be nice. I've kind of heard every club kind of talk about the schedule and how it seems to be that way. There's, a big stretch on the road, a big stretch at home. So that's just kind of how the season is going to be. And, they just had basically a whole week off because we don't play again till Saturday when the Hounds are in town. So, they had a week of rest and practices and stuff like that. And now coming off those wins and returning home is going to be really great for even drawing the fans in from that perspective too, right? So, and getting to play at home, it's always extra nice, right? You've got parents that'll make the road trips up. And yes, lots of parents actually do make those southern road trips for us too. But our parent weekend is fast approaching also. So there's a benefit of that to get to do a little bit more with things on and off the ice by having the fans there, right? We've got some stuff coming up around Halloween where the public will get to attend, and so it's going to be a good chance for the players to really connect with the community too.
And I guess finally, Megan, now you kind of alluded to it already, but after 4 games and 5 nights, you get the Ice Wolves are getting a bit of rest, but now one game this week, an important one against the Notre Dame Hounds to kind of kick off this big stretch at home. What do you kind of expect from Saturday's game against Notre Dame?
Pretty much just continuing where they left off. Everybody working pretty hard. As far as who's in net, I think there's a lot of confidence on that back end too now for, not only those goaltenders, but for the players who play in front of them. They, in front of Chirico there, they've kind of shown that they will play just the same way that they did play for Dawson Smith also, which does make a difference for your club. So that adds some stability for them also. So, yeah, they're a pretty aggressive team, so I expect to see, the same things carry on from every line. And that's one of the most exciting things that this club has been able to have from, the game where Sage Roberts was called up as an AP and he scored in his first SJHL game and at home, right? So it does not matter where you are. There's the opportunities on those lines to put up the points.
Yeah, and the Mel's a very difficult place to play too. So having 10 out of 11 at home moving forward, I guess to add to that quickly is, like you mentioned, obviously we have the Ice Wolves have 10 out of 11 at home. When it comes to the trajectory of this team moving forward and being, a couple points back of the Flin Flon Bombers in the Sherwood division, I guess how important is it for the Ice Wolves to take advantage of this massive stretch at home?
It's huge. Sometimes people talk about big games being like, the clubs when the Broncos were undefeated or the North Stars and stuff like that. But one of the things our coaching staff really seems to, speak about is that any club can beat any club on any given night. So every game is a big game, and that's kind of how you need to look at it. And, if you win, enjoy it for that moment, but then you need to reset and keep going. And, because that's just one game out of the 50 some of a schedule, right?
And that's what we love about the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League is any team can beat any team on any given night. Well, Megan, thank you so much for taking some time to join us today. We really appreciate it, and have a great call on Saturday.
Thank you. See you guys.
All right, that is the play-by-play voice of the Ronge Ice Wolves, Megan Hayhurst. Like we mentioned, massive stretch at home for the Ronge Ice Wolves, and she made a very good point. She's right. It seems like every team this year, for the most part, is going to have a lengthy stretch at home, which is it's very important to obviously take advantage of those games.
Absolutely, yeah, it is. And on top of that, I really like what she said about the goaltending as well. Like with Topher Chirico getting Rookie of the Week this past week, Dawson Smith has been in the running and the discussion for Goalie of the Week. I want to say 2 or 3 weeks already this season. I know he hasn't won it yet, but he's right on the edge of Goalie of the Week every week. So
I have a quick funny story
hit me.
With Dawson Smith actually in Goalie of the Week. Because I remember, I think it was the second week of the awards. And I know the group of us that select players of the week, we had Dawson Smith locked in as Goalie of the Week. And then Caleb Allen pitched a shutout at the showcase and also scored a goal.
Right.
Which I felt really bad. I felt really bad that it was taken from Dawson, but he's been so good this year for them. Now to have both goaltenders playing at such a high level, that gives the coaching staff confidence, that gives the team confidence, and now when you play 10 out of 11 at home now. That's a big stretch for the Ice Wolves that they could climb up and maybe, catch up to the Flin Flon Bombers because they're only 3 points back of the Bombers right now.
I was just going to say they're only 3 points back. So, yeah, I think I've said this a couple times. I love how the Ice Wolves have been playing this season.
Me too.
And now with Coach Kaminsky back behind the bench, you talked about it during the interview there with Megan. I can't wait to see this team's full identity come out. And I know Kyle Schneider did a heck of a job.
Unreal job.
but it is Kevin Kaminski. He's a different beast, you know. So I'm excited to see how he kind of puts his own kind of twist on the team as well. Now that he's going to be back there, so 15 points so far. They're second in the Sherwood division. So an important weekend, but every weekend, like Megan said, is also very important. So
just an important stretch because they only have the one game this weekend, but. A game against the Notre Dame Hounds.
Yeah, exactly.
And really, when you think about it, a game for the Ice Wolves where you kind of have to take advantage of the situation that it is. You're playing at home, and you're going to be playing a team that is playing their third game in 3 nights and playing 3 games in 3 nights, all in the north, and traveling for each game because the Notre Dame Hounds play Nipawin tonight, Thursday. They play Flin Flon Friday and then Ronge on Saturday. So that's an important game for Ronge. Obviously, you mentioned it. Every game's important for any club in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. But just looking at that situation, when you have a team coming in and they played 2 games prior in 2 days, that should be a situation that you should try and take advantage of because you might have a tired team.
And Jamie Neugebauer actually put out a good point on Twitter today, is that every time the Notre Dame Hounds have won a game, they've scored 4 goals. Every time they've lost the game,
that's such an interesting
they've scored under 2. Now, I mean, if you score 4 goals, you should win a game.
I'd agree with that.
More often than not, I should say.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting. I know it sounded more interesting than it actually is, but I also love that Jamie put it out there and was like, "So look at this." And it's awesome. So. Will that theory be put to the test against Nipawin, who's a high-scoring team?
Right.
They've been in some high-scoring games, and Flin Flon, who's red hot, and then going into Ronge as well. So tough 3 days.
So the interesting thing is, we can talk about this more when we get to the matchup. But we're talking about it now, so let's hit on it. The interesting thing I think with the Hounds and the Hawks is they've already played 2 games this year, and It's been. You did it again. I did it again. Darn. No, what I was going to say is they've played twice this year. Hounds won the first game at the Cage 4-3 in overtime.
Ooh, yeah.
After the Hawks got a late goal to tie it.
Yep.
And then last time they played, it was all Hawks in Wilcox. It was a 5-2 win. The Hawks controlled that game for the most part. So I'm interested to see how that is. But then you mentioned the Flin Flon game. Yes, Flin Flon is playing well, but the last game they played, they lost 4-1 to the Notre Dame Hounds in Wilcox.
Right.
After being a tired team on a 4-game and 5-night road trip.
Which was the Weyburn, Estevan, and Melville trip for them, and then they ended in Wilcox. Yeah.
Yes. So, it's you have a couple of teams, I think, there that you're playing for the Hounds that I think you're going to get the best of. Just because of recent history and recent memory of, the Hounds, for example, the Hounds went into Nipawin. They beat the Hawks. The Hounds just beat the Flin Flon Bombers, when they meet on Friday.
Yeah.
It'll only be 6 days removed from that loss.
Right.
So they'll be motivated and everything like that. But yeah, let's just get it right now into the schedule. Let's start with tonight, also known as Thursday. The Nipawin Hawks, we mentioned it, are playing host to the Notre Dame Hounds. 7 o'clock puck drop, and then Yorkton is in Battleford. We talk about it all the time on SJHL Insider and SJHL Weekly, Monday and Thursday, which you can find on our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe. How important 3 games and 3 nights are when you're traveling on the road. It's always extremely difficult. But the big thing is trying to get points on the road because most teams can find ways to win at home. But where the good teams separate themselves from the middle of the pack teams or the bottom teams is they win on the road. So the Yorkton Terriers, a big 3-game and 3-night stretch, kicking off tonight, obviously against Battleford, who's 11-0-0-1.
Not a big deal.
Not a big deal.
Also, Yorkton's finally going to get some games. They only have 10 games. They've only played the fewest amount.
Yes, Yorkton has only played 10 games this year so far. They were tied with Kindersley for the least amount, but Kindersley played last night.
They snuck one in there.
They snuck one in. Kindersley played last night to Weyburn. So Yorkton's playing 3-3 this weekend. I mean, I think it's going to be a really interesting game tonight between Yorkton and Battleford because you have a team in Battleford who can really put the puck in the back of the net, and you have a team in Yorkton who is very good at keeping the puck out of the net.
Out of it, and they have the highest scoring goalie in the league, Caleb Allen.
Well, he's tied for first after Kindersley.
Right. I forgot about that.
He's tied for first. There's 2 goalies have been credited
Yorkton,
for a goal now.
In fairness to them, they're 4th in the league in win percentage right now. I know they've only played 10 games, which, lower games amount, it's easier to have a higher win percentage if you win some games.
Right.
But, I think they're like 6th or 7th in the league in points, but they're 4th in win percentage. So they're holding their own every night that they do play.
100%.
Hasn't been often yet.
And I think for them too. Last week, you played 3 games at home. Unfortunately for the Terriers, they went 1-2. I think they would have, if you asked Matt Hare and his coaching staff and probably the team, I think they would have liked that game against Nip when back. You had a 2-goal lead going into the 3rd period, and you end up falling 7-5.
Yep.
And then you have a tough matchup on Saturday against Ronge, where you lose 4-1. So they'll be looking to bounce back, but again, they're playing the top team in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League right now. They're playing the team that's ranked 2nd in the SJHL Top 20 rankings, and a team who is also on a lengthy homestand. They are in the middle of an 8-game homestand. Tonight's game is game number 5, halfway through, and they're 3-0-0-1.
Not bad.
Not
Pretty
bad.
good team.
All right, let's get to Friday. Friday's a little bit busier. 5 games on tap. The Notre Dame Hounds in Flin Flon to take on the Bombers. Weyburn and Melville. We talked about that crucial. Don't want to say crucial, but it's a big home and home between those 2 teams, especially teams that are close in the standings. And
anytime you get those guys,
and in the same division.
Yeah.
Yorkton and Battleford once again. Humboldt is in Kindersley to take on the Clippers. And then 2 big games this weekend in Melfort as the Mustangs play host to the Bruins. Where would you like to start on that?
I really want to spend some time on that Yorkton Battleford's matchup.
I just talked about it.
I'm bugging you. No, you know what? Humboldt Kindersley. Kindersley's at home. Now, Humboldt is coming off. They lost their streak, their winning streak,
right,
and then they got it back. Now, Kindersley had that really great start against Weyburn. We talked about it on Tuesday night. So what team how are we going to see them bounce back after that? Because obviously it's kind of a deflating loss when you're up 3
It can
and then
be.
you lose 4-3, right? So which Kindersley Clippers team are we going to see at home again? They're going to probably want to bounce back in front of their home fans, and Humboldt's a great team. So I want to see that game. I'm going to tune into that one because I want to see the Kindersley Clippers reaction from the Weyburn game on Tuesday.
And hopefully for Kindersley and for their sake too, they were dealing with some injuries on Tuesday against the Weyburn.
Right, they were short-staffed.
They were short-staffed. There was only, I think, 17 players dressed. So hopefully they're fully staffed. You get a full lineup. And if they play like they did against the Melfort Mustangs on Saturday, it's going to be it'll be an interesting game because obviously Humboldt's one of the top teams in the league. And if they play like that, they should be right in that hockey game. And like you mentioned, obviously they're playing at home too. They're playing a 5-game homestand, and that's game number 4 for the Kindersley Clippers. The other one I want to just quickly touch on because we haven't really touched on those games or those teams just yet. Estevan and Melfort.
Yes.
Wow. Like what? This one for me is really interesting just because Estevan's coming off having their 7-game losing streak snapped to the Battleford North Stars. We'll see how they respond. But last weekend, and I wrote about it in the SJHL Power Rankings this week. When you get to Melfort, I thought last weekend was a prime example of how the first month of the season has been for them. And that is inconsistent.
Right.
Friday night, they play a great hockey game. And they hand Battleford their lone loss of the season in a shootout. A win's a win. But they beat the Battleford North Stars 2-1 in a shootout. Joel Favreau was outstanding Friday night.
As we all anticipated him to be this season.
Correct. And he has been.
Yeah.
But then Saturday, they follow it up with a 7-4 loss to the Kindersley Clippers. And when you look at, obviously, those teams in the standings, Battleford's at the top, Kindersley's at the bottom. So it's an interesting... I think it's an interesting weekend for Melfort because they're obviously, what team are you going to get?
Yeah.
I think that's what they want to know. What team are you going to get?
Mustangs team is going to kind of start coming out more often.
Correct.
Like you said, how do they stay consistent? 4 overtime losses this year.
Yeah.
That's never easy.
Yeah.
That's a lot of overtime action.
Yeah, it is. You're right.
And that doesn't even include their shootout win, which you mentioned. So they've had more than 4 games.
They've gone to extra time a lot. But that also says, another big thing is when you go to overtime a lot and you go to a shootout a lot, the big thing is with that is that means you're in a lot of hockey games.
You're in,
You're in every
lot of
game,
games. Yeah.
which is great. And that's what you want to be. You want to be in every game. But the problem is they're just not getting the results. Now, with that being said, last time Estevan was in Melfort, Melfort lost 3-2 in overtime. But I think for Melfort, I think that game, they probably thought they deserved to walk out with 2 points.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm curious to see. Those are the 2 games this weekend that are really going to stand out for me. Just for both of those teams. Just because, obviously, like you said, like Estevan's coming off getting their 7-game winning streak snapped. And Melfort, we're trying to figure out
which Melfort Mustangs will stand up.
Yes.
Will
the real Melfort Mustangs please stand up?
There we go. That wasn't even in your song suggestions to work in, and we just worked it in anyway.
Well, you're not supposed to tell people about the song suggestions that I'm supposed to try to work in. Anyways.
Insider secrets.
Let's move on to Saturday. Saturday. We got 5 more games on schedule. A lot of repeat matchups, I think.
I really want to talk about the Estevan Melfort matchup.
Get out of here. All right. Second half of that home and home between Melville and Weyburn. 7 o'clock puck drop. Nipawin in Humboldt. And, of course, we know those 2 teams met last week. Humboldt won 11-4. I think Nipawin will come out with a much better performance against Humboldt. I think they can expect a much better Hawks team on Saturday. Yorkton wraps up 3-3 against Kindersley. We touched on it kind of with Ronge. I think that's a situation where I think Kindersley has to kind of take advantage of that situation if you're the home team. Ronge takes on Notre Dame in their lone game of the week. And then the Estevan Bruins visit the Melfort Mustangs.
Yeah.
So another busy 5 games on tap.
I'm looking forward on Saturday to that Melville at Weyburn game. Now, we didn't talk about the Weyburn at Melville game the night before a whole lot.
No.
But with that in mind, you said it. You said this a lot. This is a Jeromy Corriganism.
Love those.
It's always hard to beat the same team twice in a row. So what result were we going to see on Friday? You do say that a lot.
I do say that a lot.
What result? I wasn't lying.
I was wondering where you were going with that, to be honest with you. I talk a lot.
Yeah.
As do most broadcasters.
And I listen a lot, Jer. So
that's debatable, folks.
Well, what result are we going to see on Friday in Melville, and then what's going to happen the next night in Weyburn? And to hear Nick Nielsen call PA and call the game at the same time is always a treat.
100%. It always is a treat. I'm going on Saturday.
Oh.
Actually, yeah. Let's quickly plug where I'm going this weekend.
Yes.
I should have probably.
Where are you going?
I should have probably mentioned when we were talking about Estevan and Melfort. I'll be in Melfort tomorrow, Friday night.
That's the Melfort trip. Okay.
I'll be at the Northern Lights Palace. I'm excited for that game. Should be good. And then on Saturday, I'll be in Weyburn to see Melville and Weyburn. Okay. Back to the Melville-Weyburn home and home.
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, is after Weyburn's win on Tuesday against Kindersley, those 2 teams are tied for the same amount of points in the Viterra division.
Right.
They each got 10 points. Melville's played 1 less game. Weyburn has 1 more win.
And a lot more penalty minutes by the looks of it. I'm just looking at the list here.
Sure. But if one of those teams, per se, wins both games, gets 4 points, you're right back in the hunt for a division. Because from the top of the division to the bottom of division right now is only separated by 6 points.
Yeah, that's a tight one.
And all of those divisional
Yorkton's
matchups, I think, in the Viterra division this year are going to be so crucial.
Yeah.
Try and win those games in regulations. And the other thing, too, worth mentioning, with this home and home, these 2 teams have played twice already. Weyburn's won both of them.
Ooh, that's important.
And Melville's currently on a 3-game losing streak.
Yeah.
So, we will see.
Did Melville have Kelton Pine when they played Weyburn last? Or is that since that happened? Kelton Pine was early in the year.
If you can stall for 15 seconds,
look it up?
I can tell you.
So, again, Weyburn's getting – the one thing we talked about, I think, with Weyburn, if I remember correctly last week, we talked about Weyburn a little bit. some of their players have not gotten going quite yet. And we talked about a few guys before the season started with Ty Mason and a few of those players. And we've started to see them pick up their offensive production a little bit. And I think Nick Nielsen even mentioned it, is that some of those guys had some pretty high expectations from a team last year that didn't put up a ton of points.
Right.
And those guys are coming back. The Gauthiers, the C's, those guys are now kind of coming into their own a little bit. So are we going to continue to see those guys roll in Weyburn? And Melville's got that great top line.
Yep.
And then who are we going to see? And I said this, I think, last week or the week before. Who in Melville are we going to see pick up the secondary scoring?
They need some secondary scoring.
Exactly.
You're 100%
and there's
right.
players there that can do it. So who's going to be those? Who are those names going to be?
So, to answer your question, Kelton Pine was with the Melville Millionaires the last time these two clubs played.
There we go.
However, he did not start.
So there's a storyline.
It was Jared Thompson.
There you go.
But I mean, the last game they played was a 2-1 hockey game in Weyburn. All the goals scored in the first period. Low-scoring defensive battle between the two teams. And you know what? I mean, the first game of the season in Melville was a 4-2 win for the Weyburn Red Wings, too. Another tight game. So you can kind of expect much of the same, I think, this weekend between those two clubs. I think all the games really so far this season, if you think about it, if you think about that Viterra division as a whole, every game involving two teams in the Viterra division this year have been close and have been tight.
Yeah.
There's been no blowouts or walkaways, you know. We've had, Estevan's beat Weyburn twice, both 1-goal games. Yorkton's beat Estevan twice, both 1-goal games. Weyburn's beat Melville.
Weyburn beat Estevan. Early in the year, no?
Oh, and that was the big
game.
one. I forgot about it.
When you said Estevan beat Weyburn twice, I'm like, yes, but didn't also Weyburn beat Estevan?
That's right. I forgot about
so
that.
It is,
you are correct.
It adds to your point, though.
Yes.
How close the division is.
Exactly. That's to the point. Yes.
Quick shout out for Melville. Recent addition, Nicholas Andrusiak got a point in his first game as a Millionaire, and he's fitting into the lineup pretty well in his 2 games. It's a short stint so far, but I think that's gonna be a nice pickup for them. I think Nicholas Andrusiak. Keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, so we were talking about the Viterra division. Obviously, all the points matter. I think we kind of collectively agreed at the beginning of the year this might be from top to bottom the most competitive and interesting division because we thought it was going to be so close.
Very wide open. It could be anybody's division.
Well, and the
still
other
can be. It's still tight.
100%. I mean, again, a 6-point discrepancy from top to bottom.
Yeah.
But when it comes to these teams, because obviously right now, as of today, Thursday, October 20th, Estevan currently sits in first place in the division with an 8-7 record. They have played the most games in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League this year, 15 as of right now. Yorkton has played 5 less.
Yep.
And they are only 4 points back of Estevan. Melville has played 3 less games of Estevan. They're only 6 points back. Weyburn, 2 less, 6 points back.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how these teams make up their games in hand. With that being said, these teams aren't going to make up any. Yorkton will make up 1 on Estevan, 1 game in hand this weekend because they play 3. But all these teams play 2 games, at least 2 games this weekend.
Right.
So for me, paying close attention to the Viterra division right now, just to see, I mean, are we going to see a big, shift in points? Now, on the flip side of that, we can argue the same thing in the Sherwood.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, very
The
much
Sherwood
so.
division is the exact same thing. We have, 4 very good hockey clubs that are separated by 6 points. So it's another weekend. But a lot of these, the big difference, I think the big reason why we're going to, I think for me personally at least, I'm going to be just watching the Viterra division just a little bit more. A lot of these teams in the Sherwood don't play that much this weekend. Flin Flon only has 1 game. Ronge only has 1 game. Nipawin is in Humboldt. They have and they play tonight too. And then Melfort has the 2 against Estevan. So I guess for Melfort and Nipawin, they can make up some ground with a couple of big weeks too.
Yeah.
But congestion.
And a really interesting thing about the Sherwood division too.
Right.
I like looking at the secondary numbers on the standings board. Right.
Yes.
And, I mentioned the penalty minutes a lot. I mentioned the goal differential. They have 4 of some of the best goal differentials in that division. Obviously, Flin Flon
Right.
is at plus 13, and then they have 3 teams that are almost right or hovering around 0, which is
Sure.
Top half anyways. And on top of that, they have from all 4 of their teams go 4, 5, 6, and 7 in terms of goals scored in the league. So they have the 4.
There is a stat for you.
Yeah,
I love
that. It doesn't
that.
go directly down. It goes Flin Flon,
Hey,
Nipawin, Ronge, Melfort.
that's why
but
you're an SJHL
pretty
Insider.
close. You know what I mean? I love looking at the little numbers, right?
That's a good one.
They have
I wouldn't
4 of
have
the top
noticed that.
7 scoring teams in the league
like
in
it.
that division. So
I like it. Okay, before we wrap up today's episode, I'm going to put you on the spot.
ooh, let's do it.
We got 2 games tonight, 5 games Friday, 5 games Saturday. What's your game of the weekend?
I'm gonna go with the secondary game of the Melville Weyburn series.
So
That's
in Weyburn on Saturday.
in Weyburn on Saturday.
Not because you're going.
Well, no, am I? I don't know if I am. I'm not sure if I am, but we'll talk about that after.
Oh.
We'll talk about that after.
Guess I'm going alone.
Can we bring my girls, my daughters? Can they come?
Of course.
We'll talk about it after. But I just feel like there's a lot. Like you said earlier, we talked about it a little bit already. The division's tight. It's a doubleheader against these 2 teams.
Right.
If whoever wins Friday night can win Saturday, that's a big swing in the division. And I just think there's a lot riding on that game. So I'm going to say that's the game I'm looking at as maybe it's not the one that jumps off the page points-wise, standings-wise, but in terms of importance, I think that series is really interesting this weekend.
Okay, I'll say the other game I'm going to then. Since you took the one I'm taking Saturday.
There you go.
I'll say Estevan at Melfort because similar to what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I want to see how Estevan responds after having their winning streak snapped. I want to see how Melfort responds after, I think they would say, probably a disappointing effort in Kindersley last Saturday. And see how that home and home, or it's not a home and home, those 2 games in
double
Melfort.
home.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, but
hey,
it is back to back.
Talk about being a team twice. It's even more difficult when you do it in the same building.
That's extremely difficult. So again, in the same realm, what's going to happen Friday, and how are those teams going to react on Saturday? So it's exciting. But you're going to the Friday game. So
I am going.
Are
to
you
Friday.
saying the first game is going to be the game of the week for you, or the second one?
First one?
First one.
Because I'm
you
there.
go. It's the tone setter for the weekend.
It's the tone setter. Well, yeah, it's the tone setter for the weekend. Unfortunately, we have no Sunday games.
Well,
Which
sometimes
is also,
that's okay.
Before we wrap up, how do you feel about Sunday games?
I don't mind them. Now, usually they're a little earlier in the day, right? So as a former employee in the SJHL, I didn't mind it because the game's over, and you're used to, when you work a 7:30 game, you're used to walking out and it's like pitch black. It's like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night or whatever time it is. But on a Sunday game, they usually start, depending on the city you're in, it's like 2, 4 o'clock, and then you walk out and there's still a little bit of sunlight. It's a much different vibe when you leave the building as an employee.
Maybe not at this time of the year.
Well, you're right, but it's not as late, and then you have an evening. You know what I mean? You have a bit of an evening afterwards. So.
That's fair.
Yeah, I always liked a Sunday game. It was a different feeling. Families come out because it's earlier. You get more kids often, and I like those crowds are always fun. So I like a Sunday game.
Well, unfortunately, there's no Sunday games this week.
Dang it.
But 2 games tonight, 5 games Friday, 5 games Saturday. So if you can get out to the rink to catch some action, I mean, you're not going to disappoint. There's a lot of good games this weekend. If you can't make it out to the rink, be sure to, you can watch all the games on Hockey TV. If you can't watch them on Hockey TV, well, you're in luck because we'll have highlights of all 12 games from the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League this weekend up on our YouTube page. Be sure to subscribe to the SJHL YouTube page. We've seen some great growth so far this season, so keep it coming. And with the subscribing's free too. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. That's where you'll stay up to date on the latest in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League and information from across the league and the teams. Of course, we have to give a big shout out to our podcast sponsor, that being SGI. If you can't physically watch SJHL Insider, SJHL Weekly on YouTube or the video version, and you just want to catch it on demand, be sure to subscribe to our SJHL media page on both Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That's where you can catch the audio version of the shows. Honestly, it's really handy. I'll be honest with you. Actually, Clark, last Friday, I was driving to Battleford on the road trip, and I listened to our episode of SJHL Insider.
I'm just pulling it up now, actually.
He's pulling it up right now. He's going to show the camera.
Now, excuse
You can't
the
see
bottom part where it's silly songs with Larry from VeggieTales.
That's okay.
That was the playlist on the way to work today with the girls in the car.
All right.
Not apologizing for it.
Okay.
But SJHL Media right here.
Yep.
I'm going to follow. Boom. Got it. And I'm going to do a little notification, turn on the bell, and now every time we post something, it's going to pop up on my phone.
Just like that. It's just that easy. So yeah, you can follow us or subscribe to our podcast as well, both Apple and Spotify, and our podcast sponsor for both Apple and Spotify is SGI. But of course, we have so many great sponsors in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League that help us put on these amazing shows for you, the fan. Chevrolet, Capital Auto Mall, Great Western, Cantera Seeds, RBC, SaskTel, SGEU, Direct West, Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, Tourism Saskatchewan, Young's Equipment. Thank you so much for your support. Because if it wasn't for your support, we wouldn't be able to, talk hockey every.
We still would, but not in front of cameras. Probably it'd be, we'd probably still talk hockey a little bit.
Yeah. But to the level that we want to bring,
this level.
We want to level up. Hashtag next level.
Oh no!
Nobody's using that hashtag anymore.
Well, it's empty. Yeah, I think it's open.
It's open.
Be able to snag it.
Anyways, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Got a little bit off the rails there.
That's okay. It's better when we get off the rails.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. Another great episode of SJHL Insider for Clark Munroe. My name is Jeromy Corrigan. This has been another great edition of SJHL Insider. Enjoy the games this weekend, everyone.